Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cutting through the noise, really digging into an ingredient that's both ancient and suddenly super trendy. Castor oil. If you've ever felt a bit lost in the beauty aisle, staring at all the options, or maybe just confused by the, frankly, huge list of things it supposedly does, well, this dive is definitely for you. Our mission today, simple. To get you from maybe confused consumer to, well, an expert buyer, fast. We're going to look at sourcing, decode those quality labels, check out the actual evidence for how it's used, and make sure you know exactly what a good quality product looks like.
And, to really get it, we have to start at the molecular level.
Yeah.
Castor oil. It just behaves differently than, say, your kitchen olive oil or coconut oil. And that difference, it really comes down to its chemistry. Specifically, it's got this incredibly high amount of something called ricinoleic acid.
Ricinoleic acid. Okay, sounds sciencey. How does that actually, work when I put it on my skin or my hair? What does it do?
Right. It's all about a tiny part of that molecule called the hydroxyl group.
Yeah.
This specific fatty acid, it's monounsaturated, but it has this functional hydroxyl group.
Yeah.
And that makes the oil unusually polar.
Hang on, polar, don't we usually think of oils as like the opposite? Non-polar, oil and water don't mix.
Exactly. You've nailed the key thing here. Because it has this polarity, castor oil is, well, it's uniquely sticky. It acts a bit like a humectant. So yeah, it still creates that barrier on the skin like other oils, blocking water loss. But unlike most carrier oils, it also kind of pulls moisture towards the skin or hair. That's what gives it that really characteristic, heavy, almost tacky feel. And it's why it's such a powerful moisturizer and potentially anti-inflammatory too.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense now. So knowing that's happening chemically, what does it look like? When we pick up a bottle, what are those first sort of physical clues for quality?
Well, the very first thing you'll probably notice is how thick it is. The viscosity. This isn't some thin, runny oil. Good quality, unrefined castor oil is really thick, almost like syrup. You should feel that density right away.
Yeah, it's so thick. Applying it straight often feels like you're spreading honey or something, which I guess is why everyone says to dilute it later on.
Precisely. And beyond that famous texture, look at the color. A good, unrefined oil, it'll be anywhere from a pale, sort of golden yellow to a deeper amber. And the color tells you things. Darker oils might mean there are more residues from, say, a more robust extraction, or maybe it's just less refined.
Okay, and what if it's super pale, like almost clear?
That usually points to very high refinement. Now, high refinement sounds good, right?
Yeah.
But it often means the processing might have stripped away some of those minor beneficial bits and pieces in the oil. You're still getting the main player, that ricinoleic acid, but you might lose some subtle nutrients that a nice golden or amber oil holds on to.
So yeah, texture and color, they're really your first visual checks for quality. Right. Which brings us neatly to where the real quality difference lies how it's actually made, the extraction method. And this is where it gets genuinely interesting, I think, because how they get the oil out of the bean, well, it changes everything. Quality, cost, even how clean people think it is.
Yeah, there are basically three main ways they do it, and knowing the sort of pros and cons of each is really useful for you when you're choosing. Method one, and this is often the one people really look for now, is cold pressed or expeller pressed. This is just mechanical. They use high pressure, but keep the heat really low, the big plus. It keeps the oil's natural components intact, preserves everything. It's kind of the poster child for the clean label idea.
But I've heard cold pressing doesn't get as much oil out of each bean. Is that right?
That's the trade-off, exactly. The yield is lower. So because you get less oil, the cost to produce it is higher, which usually means, yeah, a higher price tag for you on the shelf.
Is that extra cost really worth it, though? I mean, what tangible benefit does someone get paying premium for cold pressed versus, say, a really well-made oil from the second method?
That's a really tough question, actually, and one the industry grapples with. The second method is solvent extracted. Historically, this used chemical solvents, often hexane, to get the absolute maximum amount of oil out, which of course makes it cheaper. Now, if a solvent-extracted oil is refined really, really well, the performance, it might actually be quite similar to cold-pressed. But the difference often isn't just performance, it's about trust. It's about transparency. For these solvent-extracted oils to work in today's market, the good producers have to show proof. They need to verify and clearly state hexane-free processing, or they need certificates showing any tiny residue left is way below safety limits. So that premium price for cold-pressed, sometimes it's really buying peace of mind or just aligning with that less processed philosophy.
Got it. So that hexane-free label becomes something you really need to actively look for. Okay, what about method number 3, the newer one?
Ah yes, that CO2 extraction. supercritical CO2, to be precise. This is kind of the high-tech approach. It uses pressurized carbon dioxide, like the stuff in fizzy drinks, but under pressure instead of chemical solvents. It's very efficient, and you end up with an incredibly pure oil. It pretty much gets rid of those solvent residue worries. CO2 extracted castor oil, you often see a position for those more premium, maybe private label brands. It tends to be more stable, has a better feel, maybe less of that strong castor oil smell. So formulators, people making cosmetics, they often really like it for purity and stability.
Okay, processing methods covered. Let's imagine the listener now. They're in the store, bottle in hand. Beyond just looking for cold-pressed or CO2 extract, what other clues, maybe more subtle ones, should they look for on that label? We'll start with the basics, right? Certifications. Look for organic certified, whether that's USDA, EU, or another trusted one. Non-GMO status is another good sign, showing commitment to certain farming standards. And of course, really important for many people, look for that cruelty-free bunny or symbol.
Definitely. And then, if you want to dig a bit deeper into how seriously the manufacturer takes quality, you need to think about stability. How long will this oil stay fresh? For chemists like us, we look at things like acid value and peroxide value.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Acid value, peroxide value. Need a quick translation there. What is a peroxide value, and why should I, just buying a bottle, even care?
Fair point. Excellent question. Think of these values as ways to measure rancidity, basically. How fresh is the oil? Peroxide value tells you about the initial oxidation. How much has it already started to break down? A high number means it's on its way to going off. Acid value relates more to the free fatty acids, basically how many fatty acid chains have snapped off the main molecule. Why you care? Simple. High values mean the oil will start smelling bad, maybe taste off if used that way. It won't perform as well in your DIY mixes, and it could lose some of its benefits. So a really good supplier. They'll be managing these values, keeping them low, and might even provide that data. It proves their oil is fresh and stable.
And thinking about it, we can actually see a brand's commitment to that stability just by looking at the bottle itself, can't we?
Absolutely. The packaging is a huge clue. Castor oil is sensitive stuff. Light and air are not its friends. So when you see recommendations like storing it in dark glass bottles, amber or cobalt blue, and maybe even a note suggesting refrigeration after opening, those aren't just random tips. They're practical signs that the brand knows its product needs protection for a good shelf life. Investing in dark glass. That shows they're serious about maintaining quality.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've covered the chemistry, the making, the buying. Let's talk about the using, the claims. Castor oil gets hyped for, well, almost everything, it seems. Hair growth, skin smoothing, reducing inflammation. What does the actual science, the evidence, really back up?
Okay, let's break down what we know reliably. The evidence strongly supports castor oil as an excellent emollient. Remember that unique ricinoleic acid. It makes it fantastic at forming a barrier that locks moisture into the skin or the air shaft. It really cuts down on what scientists call transepidermal water loss.
Which just means water evaporating off your skin, right?
Exactly, keeping that moisture sealed in. And because of that thick texture we talked about, it also really improves slip-in hair products. Makes it easier for your comb or brush to glide through, reducing tangles and breakage. And yes, the anti-inflammatory potential of ricinoleic acid does suggest it can be helpful for soothing minor skin irritations. That seems pretty well supported.
Right, so moisturizing, soothing, helping with detangling. That makes sense. But let's address the big one, the claim you see everywhere, that castor oil makes hair grow dramatically faster. Is there solid clinical proof for that?
This is a really crucial point to get right for everyone listening. The hard universal evidence showing castor oil itself directly causes hair to grow significantly faster, like a medicine would. That evidence is, well, it's limited. The data just doesn't really support claims of dramatic pharmaceutical-level growth speed up across the board.
Okay, but then why do so many people swear they see results? Why does it seem like their hair is growing longer when they use it?
That's likely down to perception, and it's rooted in its fantastic conditioning ability. When you use castor oil regularly, what you're doing is making the hair you already have stronger and healthier. It coats the shaft, reduces friction, minimizes breakage, seals split ends. So less hair breaking off means your hair can actually reach longer lengths. It retains its lengths better. So while it might not be, turbocharging the follicle itself, it is protecting the existing hair. That makes it look fuller, healthier, and lets it grow longer simply because it's not snapping off. It really should be positioned accurately, I think, as a brilliant conditioning and moisturizing agent, not necessarily a miracle growth drug. Managing expectations there is really important.
That's a really helpful clarification. Okay, shifting again, let's talk safety. The castor bean plant itself. It's known for containing ricin, which is a pretty serious toxin. What's the risk for someone just buying castor oil? How is that ricin dealt with?
Yeah, that's a very valid concern people have. Ricin is a protein found in the bean. But the good news is, standard processing methods, whether it's high heat or the solvent extraction we discussed, effectively remove or deactivate that protein. So the oil itself, when properly processed by a reputable source, doesn't contain active ricin. Good manufacturing practices and documentation are key here. Generally speaking, for topical use, putting it on your skin or hair, it's considered very safe for most people. The main safety issues really pop up if people try to take it internally to ingest it. Unless a doctor specifically tells you to, taking it by mouth can cause, well, pretty strong laxative effects and significant gut upset. It's powerful stuff internally.
And are there any groups who need to be extra careful?
Yes, definitely. Pregnant individuals in particular need to be extremely cautious. They absolutely must talk to their doctor before considering any internal or even some specific external medicinal uses. There's a known risk of it potentially inducing labor, so it's only for use under very strict medical supervision in that context.
Okay, so let's assume someone's got a good quality oil, they're not pregnant, they're using it topically. What are the best ways to actually apply it? Well, given how incredibly thick it is, step one is almost always dilute it. Mix it with something lighter. Think jojoba oil, sweet almond oil, maybe even fractionated coconut oil, the kind that stays liquid. This just makes it easier to spread, less sticky, and prevents it feeling like, a heavy mask. You want a nice layer, not sludge.
Good point. And like with any potent new ingredient you're putting on your skin or scalp, the absolute golden rule is patch test first. Put a little bit on a small hidden spot, maybe your inner forearm. Leave it for 24 hours. Just check for any redness, itching, or irritation before you go slathering it all over. Better safe than sorry.
Definitely. Okay, let's zoom out a bit and connect these quality details back to the market. We're seeing this clear trend, aren't we, towards products that might cost more but offer more transparency.
Oh, absolutely. The demand from consumers for oils that are cold-pressed, certified organic, and guaranteed hexane-free. It's really surging. And this pressure is pushing brands. They're investing more in getting those third-party audits, those certifications, not just the basic organic label, but maybe more specific ones about their processing or sourcing. That's how they build trust and, frankly, justify that higher price point. They're paying for proof.
And that proof, that transparency, it goes right back to the source, doesn't it? Castor oil comes mainly from places like India, parts of Africa. If a brand wants to claim it's ethically sourced, what should we as consumers look for?
Yeah, clear information is crucial. You want to look for brands that actually tell you something about where the beans came from, how they were milled, how they got distributed, that sort of chain of custody. This really resonates with people who care about fair practices and the environment. Sometimes you'll see specific fair trade logos or similar indicators. And even the packaging, as we mentioned, plays a role here. Choosing that amber glass bottle over plastic, using minimal packaging, opting for recycled materials. These are all visible choices that signal a brand's commitment to sustainability beyond just the oil inside.
So it seems like we've established that the real gap between just a basic oil and a truly high-quality one often comes down to the processing details and, well, the paperwork that proves it. Let's try and boil this down. What are the absolute must-know, actionable takeaways for someone listening right now?
Okay. Your non-negotiables, I'd say, are threefold. 1. Prioritize quality based on how it was made. Look for cold-pressed or CO2 extracted. 2. Verify the standards. Check for those key certifications: organic, cruelty-free, maybe non-GMO. And 3, pay attention to the signals about stability. Look for that dark glass packaging and follow any storage advice like refrigeration after opening. Those show a brand cares about the product lasting.
Right. And alongside that, never forget the practical safety steps. Always patch test first. Always dilute it for comfortable use on skin or hair. And crucially, remember that if you're ever thinking about using it internally for medicinal reasons, that requires professional medical advice. Period.
Exactly. The key takeaway maybe is that you don't need a chemistry degree to pick a good castor oil. You just need to know which few words on the label, like cold-pressed, hexane-free, dark glass signal, that the brand has probably done the hard work for you.
So, thinking bigger picture here, what does all this mean? We've seen how consumers getting really focused on hexane-free has actually pushed the industry towards cleaner methods like mechanical pressing or CO2 extraction.
Yeah.
That's a win, right?
It is. And that success actually brings up a really interesting, maybe provocative question for you to think about. Given that this push worked for one specific, well-known solvent, hexane, How do we, as consumers, and how do brands ensure that this commitment to clean processing and full transparency actually extends to everything involved? Not just the main solvent, but maybe the filter aids they use or the cleaners for the equipment, things that aren't typically on the label. How far does clean really go? That kind of highlights the ongoing challenge and maybe the limits of what clean label transparency truly means today. Something to ponder.